Good afternoon and welcome to CR360 and SustainIt's webinar, Best Practices to Selecting and Implementing Software for Sustainability Reporting. The webinar today will cover the following topics: the sustainability software landscape, the pre-selection process and what are the milestones a company need, the selection process, how do you align requirements and culture to ensure a long-term fit, implementation challenges, configuration challenges and best practices, and then you will see a brief overview of the CR360 system in practice. Our presenters today are Joe Jones, who is the Principal Sustainability Consultant at SustainIt, and Matt Scott, who is CR360's Director of Business Development. We will have time at the end of the webinar for questions. Please send these questions to host on chat. I will now hand over to Joe to start the webinar. Thank you, Joe.
Okay, so this is my first time with this particular sharing software, so hopefully that will work. So hello, as Susan quite rightly says, so my name's Joe. I work with a company called SustainIt. It is a lowercase t, and we are sustainability data consultants, would be how we would frame what we do. So what does that mean? So we've been involved in CSR, EHS, sustainability data for nearly a decade now. We've helped our clients go from thinking about sustainability reporting, thinking about how to capture information, thinking about, well, is it something we want to do, to helping them genuinely be leaders in their industries. And we've done this through a dedication to understanding and using data. We've helped our clients get hold of better information, use better information, report on it, and use it as kind of the lever for affecting real change in their business. And for any company of, well, I suppose a significant size would be how I would put it, then invariably this comes down to technology. Excel is great, but it will only get you so far. And so you have to then start to look at what are the other options out there. What can we do to gather data more effectively? What can we do to use that data? And it comes down to talking about selecting the right CSR software. So what do you need? This is an important question. You need to know where you're standing. I mean, there's all kinds of things about it. You need to understand the landscape. And I do sometimes get interesting looks from colleagues when I talk about the idea that the sustainability landscape is a real thing for corporates. There's so much data available in terms of active meters, in terms of information from suppliers, in terms of HR systems and health and safety systems and energy management systems. Understanding what information is out there within your organization is a vital part of building a system or a requirement set for a system that will allow you to define what you're going to do and how you're going to go forward. I think one of the more interesting things about sustainability software is where a lot of the companies have grown up on. I think CR360 is an example of that, and they'll, I'm sure, talk about that, and there are others as well. For the most part, we're not talking about giant behemoth software companies. We're not talking, Oracle and IBM and stuff, they've all got their offerings, don't get me wrong. But when people talk about sustainability software, they often look instead at much smaller, more technology-led companies. And that in itself creates an interesting situation because these companies are built on innovation. They're built on expanding what they're able to do. And sustainability data is very, very similar. 5-6 years ago, nobody wanted to talk about anything beyond the carbon. That's definitely not the case now. And you have to have well-being and corporate citizenship and volunteer hours and all these other capabilities before we even start talking about supply chain, which is another challenge. So there's an awful lot of value and there's an awful lot of potential to get something that's going to work really well, which is great because this is the thing. You're not looking at something for 1 year. Good sustainability software will last you for a long time. The systems will grow as you grow. They'll evolve in the same direction. So as your needs for sustainability data and sustainability reporting expands, so will that software, which is great if you get the right fit. Not so good if you get the wrong fit. But that's why it's important to understand what you need to get right at the start. Look at the data that you have. Look at what you want to be able to do with that data and start to build a requirement spec. But then you need to understand where it's going to go and what direction you're going to take it in. You need to be very honest with yourself about not just the data you've got at the moment, but also the data you're going to have as you move forward. Be realistic about what you're trying to do. If the system and if the data requirements are going to be built purely on a legislative agenda in the UK, for instance, then you know you're going to need it to be able to do X, Y, and Z. Make sure that the system matches those requirements for you well. Make sure the system does those things as you need it to do. Be really clear about what reports you're going to go out to. So, and this is, I think, an interesting point. You've got things like GRI and CDP and SASB and FTSE for Good, and the list keeps growing and growing and growing. But don't let the tail wag the dog on this. If you know what you're going to be reporting on in this year, in next year, in year 3 year, 4 year, 5, then that also has to bear some weight on this process of building a requirement spec, because certain reporting standards will expect certain parcels of data, and you need to make sure that the system you've got is able to do that. Again, there's a lot of choice out there. There's a lot of flexibility within those choices. So when it comes time to looking for the software, be really careful not to go, oh, well, yeah, but I can just get that from the other system. Implementing sustainability software, choosing a sustainability software, building a requirement spec is all an opportunity for you to unify these things into one place, so that when it comes time to run a report or to answer to the board about a certain thing, all the information is where you need it to be. And this is something else. Consider where else you could use the CSR data. As I said, integrated reporting is a thing now for a lot of companies, and they have to be able to spit out information not just for a sustainability report, but also for their overall one. The FTSE requirements in the UK mean that you've got to have that in your financial reporting. Sustainability software as well is a great tool for engagement, for communicating beyond shareholders and beyond corporate reports. You can actually use it to talk to your customers, and you can use it to talk to your employees about what you're trying to do. I'm sure everyone knows there are all kinds of studies out there about the sustainable company as a thing, and the impact that a sustainable workplace has on the employees. It's a great way of changing how people view your company. So think about where else you're going to use CSR data and build that into your requirement spec. Understand if you want to do that, then you need to find a system that will enable you to do those things. And there are an awful lot out there that will do that. Be aware of choices. So, yeah, I think know where to start is a very good point. Understand and be honest about where you are in the process. Understand the potential reach of what you're going to do. By spending the time to understand your sustainability data as it is, as a living thing, by taking the time to build a requirement set that considers the future, then you're going to know and have a list of specifications that you're going to hit. You're going to have an idea of the journey that your software is going to want to go on. And have the requirement spec that reflects what you need. I mean, my kids will tell you that I am one of the worst technological magpies in the world. You know, if it's shiny and it does something cool, then I think I need it. And this is something that happens within software, definitely. Don't get distracted by those shiny bells and whistles. Make sure that what you're looking for is actually what you need rather than what you'd like. I mean, yeah. And be honest about it. I've seen systems that have this, oh yeah, we will integrate with Twitter, we'll integrate with LinkedIn, we'll integrate with, but is that really in your requirement specification? As a nice to have, I think there's nothing wrong with talking about how a broader reach of data is enabled through social media. But as a core requirement for your system, I think it's probably not something you want to consider. It's about being really honest internally and really staying focused when the shiny toys are kind of glittering all around you. Make sure that you get a system that does what you need to do. So how do you then start to fit all these things together? So you've got the requirement specification, you've got the topology, you've got a clear idea of actually what you need rather than what you'd like it to do. Then you've got to know what to choose. Remember that any software is not a top-down tool. The fact is that across a diverse work portfolio, you're going to have people supplying you with data. And whilst it's always possible to get them to email you an Excel spreadsheet and to copy and paste that in, then you're creating additional points of data error, additional points of failure, and you're not actually using the system the way it was intended to be used. So get other people involved. Get those who are going to be responsible for supplying the data engaged in the process of selecting the right tool. They're going to be living with it a lot more often than you are. You're going to be reporting every year. They're going to be entering data every month. So getting a system that reflects their needs is important. It's reasonably easy to do. It's about getting them involved in demos. It's about getting them talking about what can make their lives easier. And it then as well shifts their approach to a new system. I've seen so many software implementations, both in sustainability and before that as well, where software is given as, here it is, new tool, off you go. And it instantly creates an inertia with people, oh, it's a new software, we have to use this one. If the key stakeholders in sustainability software are involved at the start, you've got the opportunity to build that momentum. And they're involved and they know that the data isn't just going to corporate level, they can also use that information themselves. They can see how much CO2 their factory is generating. They can have a look at their lost time accident rates and compare it to their, want of a better term, rivals across the business function. Give them the opportunity to be involved in the discussion and see how they react to software. So I've mentioned already that sustainability software as an industry is an evolving thing, and software does move reasonably fast. It's important to go back to your requirement specification and think about not just the year 1, year 2 stuff, but the year 5, year 6, year 7 things. Because your requirements for sustainability reporting will grow. They'll expand. And as they do that, the logical choice is to make sure that your software, which you've already got in place and you've already got the relationship with and you've already trained everyone on, is able to expand into that area. So when you start looking for software, talk to the software vendors about where they're going. If you know that in year 5 you're going to have a very, very powerful supply chain data tool in place and working, and the software vendors you're talking to are looking instead at corporate risk management as their next big module that they're going to spend their time developing and getting up to shiny whizzy level, for want of a better term, then there's a divergence in path that you need to take account for. Yes, I'm sure that any software developer will tell you, oh yeah, we can definitely build that for you, that's not a problem at all. But if you understand the path that the software vendors are on, then you can make sure that that matches your own and you're walking in the same direction, which makes any growth a better thing. I'm talking about we can develop that for you, we can build that for you. During the selection process and when you start to see demonstrations of software, I think if there was 2 bits of advice I would give you, it was don't accept screenshots and don't accept, oh yeah, we can build that for you. Screenshots are not the best way for me to instill confidence because it suggests that we can't show you a living, breathing thing. It's a photograph, a snapshot in time, and you don't know what was done to frame that snapshot. You don't know what happened, what led to that snapshot being taken. And so, for those reasons, it's really important, don't accept screenshots in a demonstration. Actually see a demonstration of the system. Similarly, be wary of development is a one word for it. I would say bespoke customization. So it's the idea of a system having tweaks that are unique to you. Yes, that does mean that the system will exactly meet your requirement at that point in time. In 2 years' time, when you need to change that unique requirement to you, and the software developer who built that unique requirement has joined a different company or been run over by a bus or has decided to become a guru on Twitter, then the knowledge of how that was built and why it was built and how it all plugs together is gone. And so you're starting again to a greater or lesser extent, hopefully to a lesser, quite possibly to a greater. If you stay with a system that's own flexibility in configuration allows you to do everything you need, you will completely get rid of that problem. It's when you go in for our special custom development that's bespoke to you, you do open up yourself to problems further on down the road. And one of the important things, as we said, is making sure the system lasts for you. So, stay with reasonably close to off the shelf if you can. But the systems, as I said, nearly every vendor we work with, and we do work with a lot of vendors, have got systems that are incredibly configurable, so you shouldn't have too many problems, as long as you don't go down the customer. So know how to make sure that everything works well for you. CSR data and the systems that are associated to it often look really complicated because there's a breadth involved. As I said, 5 years ago, it was carbon. Now it's not. And you've got to be able to pull data and use data from an awful lot of different places, an awful lot of different teams. But the fact is, the softwares that are designed to do this will do it very, very well. There's a lot of technology out there. There's a lot of innovation. And a lot of it is built around making very usable platforms. I think sometimes it can look slightly more intimidating because sustainability managers, on the whole, don't come from a software deployment background. But the technology is really strong, and there's an awful lot of stuff that will do a lot of what you need it to do. Again, I go back to the shiny toys. Don't get distracted by them. I do in my personal life all the time. I try desperately not to as a professional, and one of the biggest objectives we set out when we work with our clients is to be really specific about what's actually needed as opposed to what we would like it to be able to do as well. And keeping them on that track is a great way of making sure that software delivers functionality that's required. And again, view the system as a collaborative process. Yes, you can just go, here's your new software, use it. But if you've got people involved, then you get so much more. One of the things that we always find when we do topology work and we do the assessment work on terms of spec builds with clients is that there will be people within organizations who have been desperate for this conversation to happen. They've wanted to talk about better sustainability data. They've wanted to talk about the small volunteer schemes that they've been doing themselves with some of their friends that they've poured their hearts and their souls into. They want to talk about how they've been really keen to introduce waste reduction processes, or that they can save energy this way, and they've done it in their factory and we can share that. These people always exist, and if the building of the specification, if the launch of the system is a collaborative process, then you've got a great way of getting people to talk to you and share with you and move forward more effectively, more efficiently, and more easily. All great things to be able to do. So we're coming to the end of what I have to say, where we've talked about how you build a requirement spec, about how you understand what your needs look like in terms of long-term needs, as opposed to just this is where we are today. And I've talked a little bit about how you make sure that the software chooses right. But I also wanted to, for want of a better term, scare you guys a bit. So that doesn't always go according to plan. And these are some bits of research that aren't necessarily just about sustainability implementations, but about software implementations. And I think they're all very true. 50% of software functionality paid for by organizations is not actually used. Understand what you want your system to do and be honest about what the system needs you to do. There are enterprise-level solutions out there that I am sure are barely breaking a sweat in terms of pushing at the boundaries of their functionality. If you're really honest about what you need to do, then you get a good fit. And if you get a good fit, then you bypass this quite neatly. Again, top-down implementations create inertia and they create problems. People won't get it. One of the key services that we work with our clients on is helping their users get access to and use sustainability software more effectively. And every now and again, we come across clients or we come across users who just don't like the software. It's been dumped on them. They don't understand what it's used for. It just doesn't fit with what they want to do. And it creates problems. The data is less accurate. The reporting is less timely. If users understand where you're going, they understand that it's usable for them and it's useful for them, you get a lot better out of it. If people understand the journey, they will help you on the journey. Yeah, 15% of software implementations are abandoned shortly after implementation. The fact is, software can go wrong, and it's by understanding what you want to do, being honest about what you want to do, and making sure that everybody is on track all the way through that you get around that. As I said, so long as you know where you are, you know where you want to go, and you're honest about those, then that, I think, will get you a long way. And then I apologize, but I have to put this slide up or I get killed by my marketing department. Obviously, we've been helping some big corporates around the world for the last 10 years with exactly these challenges. I should now probably pass you over to Matt, who will talk a little bit more about CR360 and about implementation specifically.
Great, thanks very much, Joe. So I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about CR360. I'm going to give you a quick introduction to us, and then we're going to get on talk a little bit about some configuration challenges that we've seen, within the implementations that we've done, and try and give you some tips from our perspective. And then what we're going to do is go and look at a software demonstration, so you'll get to see a little bit of the software and also how we configure that software. So to start with, let's go to the first slide here. So a little bit about CR360 if you don't know us. We're sustainability and EH software specialists, so that's all we do. We're not focusing on any other type of software. We're purely focused on this particular aspect of the market. We've been going since 2002. We've been consistently profitable since then. We haven't taken venture capital funding. We have an in-house development team. There are about 160 people in the business now these days, and about 40 of those are software developers. And what they're developing is a hosted and managed software solution. Okay, it does have an installed option. You can host it on your own servers, but most typically people are taking it the software as a service. So we have key partnerships and accreditations as well as working with SustainIt. We also work with the likes of CDP, the GRI, SASB, on the partnership side, Accenture and Deloitte and PwC and lots of other entities that you're probably very familiar with and will come across during your working days. So let's go to the next slide here. So a little bit of an overview of where we're based. We're based in Europe and also America. So I'm talking to you from the UK, and we're based in Cambridge. We also have an office in Chicago, and we're servicing about 200 different clients worldwide. So that's 200 implementations that we've been through. So I'm hoping to be able to share a little bit of insight from those implementations with you. So that's about 400,000 users, 168 different countries, and really we're working all the way across the world. So from an awards and recognition perspective, I'll blow our trumpet very, very quickly here. So we're often identified as a market leader by some of the people that you may be talking to and looking at for guidance. So top product of the year from Environmental Leader and a market leader as recommended by various different folks. So let's get into the kind of the meat of the conversation. So what I wanted to do is talk to you a little bit about our processes at CR360. Now, Joe and also lots of our other partners work with lots of different vendors as well as us, and different vendors do have different project processes depending on how evolved they are, what level of maturity they're working at. So the process that we undertake within the sales process, the business development process, is to first understand requirements, whether it's an RFP that is sent to us, or we're collaborating with the client and understanding what the requirements are. What we do is we take that information and we understand it ourselves and document that within a statement of work. We then, once we've got that statement of work, we can move to a final proposal, and then once we've got the commercials agreed, we can sign the contract. And so we start to collaborate with our clients very early in the process. And Joe kind of pointed out a few hints and tips from his perspective. And actually, as a software vendor, it's really key to have our clients understand what it is they want out of a system, because that really does then drive the requirements. It means that we can document things accurately and capture the scope as is going to add value to the business. So the first thing we do once we've got our statement of work and we've signed the contract is set up a startup meeting. Okay, so that'll be a meeting where we have a project manager who'll join you, implementation consultants, and they'll talk you through the various processes that we're going to be going through, and they'll convert that statement of work document into a detailed project charter. So that project charter has got all of the information that relates to the configuration project, all very nicely documented, and then we get on to the project itself. And we actually run a very agile and dynamic project process, so we're not kind of disappearing off with that requirement spec and hiding away in Cambridge or Chicago and working away on things. We're talking to you every single week, and we're delivering additions to a live website. Okay, so you're seeing that website all the time. And as we make changes and we update things, we're then passing those elements to you for user acceptance testing. So you're very involved in that whole process. And that sort of process does change from vendor to vendor, and I'd recommend that you look for that sort of project process, because it means that you can see exactly what you're getting and you can provide feedback immediately. So that's a little bit about our project process. We go through the UAT process into training. Training is actually provided by us throughout the process because you're always looking at a site each week, but there is specific training provided as well. And then we move to a go live date, and we move into a support phase where you can start working with us around the support side of things. So there's two areas that I wanted to talk about in a bit more detail. The first is the selection process, and that's where I spend a lot of my time as a business development person. So really you need to make sure you've got the right team available on your side. And Joe, again, alluded to this within his presentation. Make sure you've got all of your stakeholders involved in the selection process. It's fairly easy in a very large business to be siloed. I'm talking to hundreds of businesses every year. And what is fairly typical is to find people in the environment team who are doing their thing. They have their systems, and they are passing data up to a central global function that's then aggregating that. Now, again, sustainability has matured. We've got to the point where we have systems that are going to provide functionality that allows you to collect data from smart meters, for example, also across your supply chain system, down multiple tiers of your supply chain. You can look at different products. You can look at health and safety events and different incidents and accidents that may occur and track all of those within that one system. So rather than having a disparate kind of IT landscape within sustainability, you can actually have a very comprehensive system from providers like ourselves and others. So it's worth thinking about that, and it's worth engaging all of those different people to see whether there is a pre-existing system that they're going to want you to be using, or whether you have that opportunity to put in a fresh and new system. The second thing there is to engage IT early, and that's something that sometimes gets missed. When you're looking at a software as a service system, it's a service. There's no servers that need to be installed on your premises. However, you do need to be talking to your IT guys. They will have things to say. And also the sort of data that you're going to be managing is quite key as to what you can and you can't share externally. So we're a software as a service provider, which means our data is in the cloud. So our servers are in London Docklands, and that's one of the kind of the main internet hubs within the UK and actually globally. So that's an enterprise grade solution. But if you're holding very sensitive data, your IT teams would like to understand how that data is being held, etc. So engage those guys early and get them into the conversation. From a system perspective, again, I'd reiterate some of the things that Joe's been saying. It's really quite key that you have a grand vision. So do understand that sustainability systems can cover a lot of the different areas of your business. It's good to engage people, get that kind of stakeholder buy-in, but also make sure that if you get those systems, you do have the ability to start small. Okay, so you don't need to have a massive, very, very large system on day one. That system can grow over time. So more and more we're seeing people who have started with us years ago around energy and carbon, and they're going along that sustainability journey and adding in supply chain, EHS, risk, community modules, things like that. So they're very much dynamic systems. They can grow with you as you go along that sustainability journey. More and more we're coming and having conversations with clients who are much more sophisticated in sustainability. So they've maybe been through one system or two systems or tried something in-house, and then they look at vendors like ourselves and say, okay, well I can manage all of these things in one platform. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to have a larger project. So the projects overall are getting larger within the sustainability software area. And really, to reiterate a few things, so make sure you're focused on what your needs are today, but also have an eye to the long term. Okay, so we are one of the vendors that is able to provide all of the different facets of sustainability. So it's good to make sure that you do that. And also, I've mentioned statement of work. It's really key that you ask your vendor to do that during the sales and business development process. It's something that at CR360 we do that at our cost, so it's something that we do with you up to a limit. Obviously, if we're spending lots of days, then we'll talk and come to a sensible arrangement. But typically, for most of our clients, we have a statement of work that's created that supports our contract, and it means that you're very clear that we CR360 have a good and clear understanding of your requirements. Also, as well as that, we tend to provide most of our clients that request it with a trial system if they need that for their evaluation. So you can get your hands on the system, you can start to understand how that works. So from an implementation challenges perspective, this is getting more into my colleagues' realms, the people who are implementing the systems after they've been selected and we've got it past the contracting stage. But from a configuration side and implementation perspective, planning is super key. And I guess that's the same as every aspect of life. The better you plan, the better your outcomes are. And here we've got a couple of different takeaways. So just be very aware of scope creep. Now, if we can document and we've got a good statement of work, a good project charter that defines what it is we're going to be doing, then we're pretty set for the project to be successful. There is always some flexibility in that. If you need to move things around or you need to add things into the project, we can always accommodate those sorts of things. But the more planning you can do in advance, the better. And so about 20% of the entire project budget can be dedicated to planning. And we've seen more than 20%, and sometimes it's less, but as a rule of thumb, just make sure you spend that time. From a data perspective, you also need to try and map that data and understand where it is within your business. There'll be different types of data. It'll be in varying formats. You may have historic data. I've seen people with historic data going back decades from different systems in different formats. From our perspective as a software vendor, we have a nicely formatted historic data file, and we put all of that together into our system. That's a relatively quick and easy thing to do. We have lots of disparate files in different formats that can take a huge amount of time. And that's where some of our partners play a really key role during this whole process. If you're faced with a very big business and you've got that sort of landscape where data is in different areas and it's in different systems, many of our partners can map that data for you. So they'll outline exactly where the data is, how you can get it, which systems it might reside in, whether it's best to connect to that system automatically and put in a connection between CR360 and that system, or whether you're going to be taking an export and import it into the CR360 software. So having that kind of good understanding of where your data resides and how you can pull that together is quite key. From a resource perspective as well, and again, this is kind of common project processes, but making sure that we've got key resource available on the client side. We have a relatively large team now within CR360, so we have about 40 to 50 implementation consultants who are configuring systems all the time, so there's always resource available on our side. There are generally less people who, on the client side, who are able to understand software and have that knowledge. So it's always good to take into account, whether people are going to be available, what other projects are going on, whether it's reporting season, etc. when you're planning these things in. So that's the kind of implementation side of things. So just to reiterate a few key takeaways. So ensure that stakeholders are involved in the selection process. Try and make that as wide as possible, but don't kind of get involved in lots and lots of conversations without actually doing things. So you can rein the scope back in once you understand what the vision is. You may have a larger vision, split that up into different elements and components, and then phase the project so you can get started with something small and grow that over time. Good planning and making time for scoping are really critical. Project configuration process do vary between vendors, so have a conversation about them with vendors about what processes they use. How agile is it? Can you see the site? How often will you see the site? Is there a statement of work that's going to support the process and those sorts of things? But at the end of the day, you need to choose the software that's right for your business and the team that's right for your business. We have a very open and collaborative culture at CR360. We're relatively flexible. We're a very young, dynamic sort of a business, and that fits with a lot of our clients. But there are, if you're a smaller business, you may say, well, actually, we want to be looking at smaller vendors who are maybe more local, or if you're a more global business, you really want a global vendor like ourselves and others who are going to be able to support you on that kind of sustainability journey.